Total War Attila is a game that exists. I know, I forget too, despite having over 400 hours in the thing. Now, unlike its older, more popular brother Rome 2, Attila doesn't have as much DLC, but some of what it does have is actually quite good. So I'm going to rank every single one of these DLCs to hopefully save your wallet from being razed to the ground the next time there's a sale. Much like the Rome 2 DLC tier list, this video will be split into two categories, culture packs and campaign packs. So if you're only interested in a particular DLC, then screw up the timestamps down below to find the content that you want to watch. Culture packs each unlock 3 new factions for you to play as in the grand campaign. Unlocked factions always have a handful of unique units, and sometimes even have unique buildings as well, which is a step above your typical Rome 2 culture pack. Starting things off, we have the Viking Forefathers. This DLC has a special place in my heart. The footage on your screen right now is from a video I made called The Norseman, which Creative Assembly featured on their official Facebook page back in 2015. Unfortunately, in my infinite wisdom, I used the theme song from the Vikings TV show, which eventually got that video copyright claimed and taken down. So the video now exists only on my hard drive. But what about the DLC? Is it actually good? No, it isn't. The 3 factions that it adds, the Danes, the Geats, and the Jutes, have unit rosters that are pound for pound worse versions of their Germanic cousins. The Danes are basically a meme faction, having the worst roster of the 3 and with their trait being immunity to seasickness. The Jutes have some awesome axe infantry, but their bonus to raising settlements is a bad trait to have on a settlement-based faction. Only the Geats have a truly powerful game-changing trait, with their immunity to snow attrition being clutch in the late game when 3 out of the 4 seasons in Europe are winter. Overall, out of every DLC for Attila, this one gives you the least value for your money, as the Saxons and the Franks in the base game can give you a very similar gameplay experience for free. D tier. CA stepped it up with the Longbeards DLC, at least for 2 out of the 3 factions. All 3 of the added Germanic factions get a unique event chain that ends up giving you unique ancillaries depending on the choices that you make, which is neat. The Longbeards managed to achieve the Herculean feat of having a unique identity amongst a sea of other Germanic factions. Their melee infantry units are strong, have lots of clubs, and have long beards. And their faction traits decent, but not great. The Burgundians are even better, with unique barbed skirmishers and badass scattershot slingers. We're talking shotgun slingers, guys. They also have powerful shock cavalry and a faction trait that's strictly stronger than the other 2. It gives them an innate bonus to unit replenishment and a food bonus to low fertility regions, which in this game is everywhere. Unfortunately, CA ran out of gas when they got to the Alemans. So what do the Alemans have? They have jewelry. They wear jewels. It looks cool, but bejeweled nobles are trash. This faction is unimaginative, and both its roster and faction trait is weaker than the other 2. I'd much rather play as the Franks or the Saxons, and trust me, you would too. If the Alemans were good, this would easily be an A or B tier DLC, but they're not, and there are already plenty of unique Germanic factions in the base game, so it's C tier. If you're dead set on buying a Germanic faction DLC, then this one is the one to get, but I wouldn't go out of my way for it. The Longbeards culture pack took a hit for adding yet more Germanic factions, and the Celtic culture pack gets bonus points for doing the opposite, and more importantly, doing it well. There are only 3 Celtic factions in the grand campaign, and this DLC unlocks all 3 of them. Their cultural trait specializes in ambush tactics, giving all Celtic units guerrilla deployment. This powerful game-changing trait also leans heavily into the mysterious blue psycho vibe that the Britannic Celts have in popular culture, which makes playing as them all the more enjoyable. Their units are weaker than their Germanic counterparts, meaning you'll need to rely on your ambushing tactics to get the upper hand, which ends up playing a lot like the Suebi did in Rome 2. Like the Longbeards, the Celts all have a unique event chain that ends up giving you a powerful general at the end depending on the choices that you make. But one of the best aspects of this DLC is that it gives you a unique starting position, the British Isles. Once you consolidate your hold on Britain, you can weather the Huns better than most factions in the game can, due to the British Isles basically being a noob box for the players. Combine the fact that any enemy will need to navally invade you with your strong ambushing buff, and Attila's BS stack spam won't stand a chance. This is a culture pack done right, and it's definitely worth the price of admission. A tier. The Slavic Nations DLC unlocks the Antians, the Venetians, and the Sclavanians, and adds them into a new Slavic culture group. Much like the Celts and the Longbeards, the Slavs have a story event chain that's well written and immersive. They have their own unique religion with all the attendant effects, bonuses, and buildings that comes with that as well. Unlike the Celts, however, the Slavs feel lazily developed. The new poison arrows that they get are strong, hilariously overpowered in fact. The in-game voice lines have leftovers from the Germanic culture group everywhere, and the army names are straight up copied and pasted from those. The rosters for all three factions are basically the same, which is a step down from the Celts and the Longbeards DLC. Coming hot on the heels of Age of Charlemagne, this DLC was a huge letdown. It's fun memeing with poison arrows once or twice, spiffing Brit style, but the unique faction traits that differentiate the three Slavic factions isn't enough to justify the sameness of their rosters. Hopefully Medieval 3 will do the Slavs justice, because this C-tier DLC definitely doesn't. Finally, we have the Empires of Sands Culture Pack. Man, there is something about desert factions that seems to bring out the best in CA. Much like Rome 2's Desert Kingdoms DLC, Empire of Sands is a step above all the rest in quality, and it's why videos like these are necessary, because it costs the same as the Viking Forefathers does. This pack unlocks Himyar, Axum, and the Tenokids for play, and each one plays wildly different. Religion plays a huge role for these factions, especially Himyar and Axum, who can choose between two different religions and have unique religious building chains for each one. Their strongest units are lock-behind religion, requiring 75% dominance across all provinces to unlock. They have unique victory conditions depending on which religion they choose, and diplomatic and public order penalties for religious differences are amplified for these factions as well. The Tenokids, meanwhile, are a horde faction who can only gain food by attacking settlements, and gain free militia units when raiding. Speaking of units, all three of the desert factions have distinct, powerful rosters. Sure, they share a general amount of units, but Axum has powerful battle-axe-wielding Spice Guard. Himyar has masked infantry units clad in chainmail and black robes. And the Tenokids have cavalry that can match the Sassanids in its effectiveness. They're extremely tough to play as, though, so keep that in mind. You can rest assured that you're getting your money's worth with this DLC, which is why it deserves its spot in the S tier. Campaign packs add in entirely new campaign maps, factions, and start dates to the game. They're more expensive and more expansive than culture packs. The first of the two campaign packs for Attila is The Last Roman. This DLC focuses on the legendary Roman general Belisarius' quest to reclaim the late Roman Empire from the Germanic kingdoms that conquered it, in the west that is. There are 5 playable factions to choose from, with all but one starting with vast swaths of territory, so keep that in mind if you're someone who prefers to start small. The Roman Expedition faction is by far the most unique faction here. You play as a Roman horde starting in North Africa with no territory, poised for immediate conflict with the Vandals. When playing as them, there are several event chains you must contend with, and they're more impactful than any of the previous DLC event chains. I'm not going to spoil anything, but these add some awesome flavor to the campaign that makes it feel much more narrative-driven than most Total War campaigns, almost like a story mode. Overall, this DLC is definitely a nice change of pace from the Grand Campaign, and worth checking out if you'd like to play a more narrative-driven experience as a Roman Horde faction. On the other hand, though, it lacks replayability, and when compared to the next campaign pack DLC, it doesn't measure up in quality or quantity. You just aren't getting as much for your money here, which is why it belongs in B tier. Last, but definitely not least, we have Age of Charlemagne. This campaign takes place on a zoomed-in map of Western and Central Europe in the 8th century, during the reign of Charlemagne, King of the Franks. The map is big, with a whopping 151 regions, 51 more than the last Roman's map. You get 8 playable factions to choose from: the Franks, Mercia, Asturias, the Emirate of Cordoba, the Lombards, Westphalia, the Avars, and the Danes. Yes, the Danes, not the meme Danes from the Viking Forefathers DLC. Every part of the map is represented with a playable faction, and each of these playable factions have a unique quest called A Kingdom Rises, which, when you complete it, changes the name of your faction into a more modern version of itself. So Mercia becomes England, the Franks become the Holy Roman Empire, the Danes become the Vikings, etc. Very cool and very flavorful. The roster design for all 8 factions is decent, although not as vibrant and interesting as the Grand Campaign unit rosters in my opinion. The unit cards look great, however, and really add to the early medieval atmosphere of the DLC. Unlike The Last Roman, which really only has one truly unique faction, Age of Charlemagne has several. The Danes begin the game with a public order debuff that can only be resolved by raiding and sacking a specific number of times. Charlemagne has to deal with his brother Carloman, Cordoba has to deal with the off-map Umayyad Caliphate event chain, and so on and so forth. Diplomacy is far easier to manage in this DLC, but on the other hand, the player has to deal with the included war wariness mechanic. Overall, Age of Charlemagne is one of the best campaign DLCs available for any Total War game, in my opinion. I mean, it easily competes with other gems like Rise of the Republic for Rome 2 and Rise of the Samurai for Shogun 2. It's a shame that Attila didn't end up getting as much love and support as Rome 2 did, because they definitely could have done more DLCs. I would have loved to see a Rise of Islam for one. That would have been epic. But that being said, they went out with a bang here, guys. Age of Charlemagne is very, very solid. If you're only going to buy one DLC for this game, then my recommendation is the Frankie Boy. He's an S tier. But wait, what about the Blood and Burning DLC, you might ask? It's only worth buying if you care about seeing blood on soldiers, blood on the ground, and some pretty cool dismemberment animations. I mean, the burning and puking effects are rare and don't add much value, but the fact that owning Blood and Burning also gives you the blood pack for Thrones of Britannia is a nice little bonus. It doesn't add anything to the gameplay experience though, so you decide for yourself if blood effects are worth $3. So that's it. That's every DLC for Total War Attila. I hope this video helped you out. If it did, feel free to leave a like on the video as it really helps me out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment as I do read all of them. And if you're interested in picking up some Rome 2 DLC while you're here, you can find the tier list video for that on your screen right now or in the description down below. Check out my channel and consider subscribing for more Total War content like this, especially mod overviews if that's your thing. Thanks for watching, wash your hands, and I'll see you all in the next video.